Okay, everybody, whoever's here, welcome to my Guru's online classroom for, actually, let's get the date correct here. This is going to be April 7th, 2021. And what we're going to talk about today is something that I think tends to be a little bit overlooked when people are kind of thinking about the GRE and the GMAT, and that's pretty much how to and when to take notes. All right. Generally, when you read one of the resource guides, one of the any of the test prep firms, they'll tell you to write stuff down here and there, which is fine. And yes, you should be jotting some things down. But people don't really have a good sense about kind of how and when to do this, and especially given that you're working with a pretty limited time, right? It's half an hour or whatever per per section. So you want to make sure that you are taking notes effectively and that you know what to expect. And also, note taking on the GRE and the GMAT is going to be a little bit different. So let's just quickly run down what that's going to look like. On the GRE, if you're actually taking it in person, you're going to have access to scratch paper. All right, which is fine. The GRE, if you are not taking it in person, the GRE at home, you're going to be a little bit more limited because they're going to have a proctor watching you. All right, so you're going to have basically your own whiteboard. You're allowed your own whiteboard. So you don't want something that's that's dry erasable or a single sheet of paper. Now that is obviously not very much room to work with. So you want to, if you're taking it at home, you want to kind of keep this in mind. GRE in person, you have access to as much scratch paper as you like. GMAT is a little bit different. The GMAT, they give you basically a laminated yellow scratch pad with a semi-permanent marker, which you cannot erase. All right. You can use more. They'll give you more scratch paper if you need it, but just be aware of that. People tend to not like the GMAT, scratch paper all that much because a lot of people would prefer to annotate the actual tests, which you cannot do, unfortunately, on this type of computer adaptive test. So that said, let's take a look at kind of what you should be taking notes for, what note taking actually looks like for both of these exams. Now, here's the thing about both the GRE and the GMAT and all of these standardized tests. Both the GRE and the GMAT are concept-based. What does that mean? That basically means that there is there's kind of a very finite set of concepts that you're going to be tested on. All right. And if you can identify what those concepts are relatively quickly, it's going to help streamline your test taking ability. It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to allow you to finish within the time frame. It's going to allow you to handle the test questions more efficiently and more effectively. All right. They're concept based. So what you want to do is your note taking should reflect that. So your note taking, not even note taking, or like say even things that you jot down, right? You're going to take very sparing notes. Should be geared towards helping you identify quickly, kind of what that sorry. Just so you know now, don't worry, we're going to be recording it. So you'll have access to it anyway. So if there's any kind of tech issues or anything like that. But all right, so the thing is, you want to gear your note taking towards identifying concepts and identifying concepts quickly. All right, so it's a little bit different than if you're note taking in school or in a university, right, where you want to kind of get down everything that the professor tells you. Here, you really want to be simplistic and sparing in terms of your notes. You want whatever you jot down to basically be able to take up a tiny bit of space on the paper. All right, so you want to write small but legibly enough for you to see. Right, legibly. All right, you want to be You don't want to spend too much time writing things down. You want to just, kind of quickly jot down what's important, what's going to help you through the problem, what's going to help you identify, particular concepts quickly. All right. That said, I'm going to go through the content of the GRE and the GMAT, really quickly and kind of, from the perspective of how to, effectively take notes for each one of these sections. All right. The first one we're going to look at is reading comp. And the reason I'm going to start with that is because reading comprehension is very similar on both the GRE and the GMAT. It's not exactly the same, but it's going to be kind of close. When you're doing your reading comprehension, these can be, short to long passages, right? So they could be anywhere. So, it could be, say, like 200 to, 400 words or something like that. Some of the GRE passages are actually quite short, right? And then these may have 3 or 4 questions associated with them, all right? So here's what you want to do. When you're doing reading comprehension, you're reading for certain particular things, right? And if you could spot those things, and we've done a couple of reading comprehension sessions in previous classes here, so, you can see the recordings, but you're looking for a couple of really basic things, all right? What they're testing you on with reading comprehension, both the GRE and the GMAT, is your ability to read for structure, read for tone, read for point of view, read for main content, read for relevance, and read for scope. All right, and again, we've talked about these in other classes, so we're not going to focus on the reading comp. But so you're being tested not on the content itself, not like, the in-depth, all the details. You're being tested on kind of like, how well can you understand what you've just read. So if you're taking notes on a reading comprehension passage, you want your note-taking to really quickly identify the main idea of the passage and each paragraph. All right. So granted, you're not able to actually write a note, on the actual passage itself, which is a little bit annoying. So what you want to do, you want to jot a quick note, down on the paper to show that you kind of know, what each paragraph is about. That will help you write a passage map so that you kind of figure out what's where. All right. So what you might do is have I don't know, 2 words for paragraph 1, right? Main idea, 2 words for paragraph 2, and so on. And each one of these, sets of note taking should be, some of the main ideas. All right, and that's it. You don't want to write too much. You just want to use the notes to kind of help you figure out what's where. And then remember, when for the detail questions, you don't need to retain the details as you're actually reading. Those will come into play when you're actually asked a question about them specifically. All right. So keep your notes sparing, but just have maybe a total of 10 words for the entire passage, which kind of shows you how it's laid out. All right. So that's what you want to do for the reading comprehensions. Let's actually see if maybe we can take a quick look at how that, what that might look like. So one second here. Just want to get a good one. All right, here we go. Okay, sorry for the little bit of a wait there. Okay, I'm going to copy in a passage from the GRE here. All right. So here's a GRE reading comp passage. All right. We're not going to, obviously not going to spend time with it. And again, the GMAT one is going to be handled roughly the same way. All right. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so again, we're not gonna spend time actually looking through, but here what I might do, okay, is take a look and say, okay, Maitland observes that legal documents are the best, only available evidence. Okay, why then has it taken so long for historians to focus systematically on civil versus criminal law? All right, so that's kind of what happens in the first part here, right? So it raises a question, right? So something like, why focus on criminal and not civil law, right? Something like that. Even that's probably more words than I would normally use, but something like that. So what you want to do, you want to, if you're going to take notes, you want to jot down something like that, which kind of captures the first half of the, of the passage. All right, so that's kind of what that's going to look like. Okay, so those are reading comps. The next category in the verbal is going to be what's called critical reasoning. That's a GMAT specific category. Now, the critical reasoning questions on the GMAT, those are really about logical thinking. They're, whereas the reading comprehension ones are really about, do you know what's where? The critical reasoning ones are about logical thinking. All right. Do you know how to read a premise of a few sentences and identify the assumptions, the conclusions, the strengths, the weaknesses, potential inferences, potential flaws, potential areas of paradox, that kind of thing. All right. And what you're doing with critical reasoning, the best way to go about these, and again, we have we have got another couple of sessions that are devoted to that we've done before. But what you want to do is summarize the logical argument in just a few words or sentences. All right. Now, again, you're probably not going to want to write a whole. You're not going to want to write like a full sentence or two for critical reasoning on on GMAT, but it might help you to kind of jot down if something relates to something else, if kind of jot down kind of where the conclusion is, what the assumption is, just a couple of words, just to kind of give you a general sense of kind of how they're thinking. Let me grab one to show you if you can. Let's see. Pause the recording for 1 second. Okay, so let's have a look at this one here. Okay, this is something that you might find on the GMAT. All right. Okay. So for this one here, because this is shorter, so let's take maybe say 30 seconds, and I'm going to read it out loud. All right. Given the current economic climate, universal health care is an impossibility in the United States. More than half of all U.S. households report feeling overwhelmed by expenses, and many people are struggling to find additional sources of income. Funding such a massive program would require significant tax increases, adding to the financial burden of many individuals. The employer-sponsored healthcare system currently in place keeps taxes low, protecting our nation's economy. Okay, so what I'd want to do, if I were inclined to kind of jot things down for this particular one, what I might do is, try to capture the premise of this whole thing in just a couple of words or phrases. All right. So essentially, the conclusion is up top. Now, I'm not actually going to underline it because you can't underline it on the actual test. But the conclusion is basically universal health care cannot happen. Universal health care is impossible. So you might abbreviate UHC, not possible, right? Okay, that's conclusion. Okay, and what's the argument? Why is this person saying that UHC is not possible? Well, he's basically saying that, okay, argument, people are overwhelmed by expenses, right? So let's, kind of keep it short, say money is a problem, right? Okay. Okay, and then he's saying that the program, so there's one argument, A for argument, and then another argument, A for argument, is that program would be, too high, the taxes would be too high. Okay, and that's really it. So basically saying it's like, okay, there's a money, people have a problem with money, taxes of a potential universal healthcare program are going to be too high, therefore it's not possible. So we've pretty much distilled the argument just a couple, to a couple of lines, and that can help you pick apart what the actual argument is. All right, because now you can quickly and easily see the distilled argument. Okay, so that's basically the way you do this on a critical reason type of question. So the idea is to really summarize in just a few words if you can. All right. Okay, next category is we're going to go back to sentence correction, also on the GMAT. Here, if you're taking notes, there's not too much that you're going to need to do because sentences were is right in front of you. This is probably something where you're probably going to be better off keeping most of it in your head. The one thing that you might do is process of elimination. All right. So if it helps you to kind of write down, say, A, B, C, D, E, and if you recognize that there's a grammatical error in, say, C and D, then yeah, you can by all means kind of cross those out. But I think in general, I don't think you really need to take all that many notes in the way of sentence correction, unless there's something that potentially jumps out at you if you want to kind of write a note to yourself or something like that. The other kind of the counterpart on the GRE are the vocabulary-oriented questions. Okay, and these are both fill in the blanks. There are two types. There are the synonym ones, which they call sentence equivalents. And then there are the what they call the text completion. That's the one where you get 1, 2, or 3 blanks. There is not too much that you need to do here, either with respect to to note taking. You might, for example, if you find if something, if a blank has potentially a positive or a negative sense to it, it might help you to just put in a plus or a minus in that blank. It's like, if you know that you're looking for a word that's potentially positive, you might say, okay, I'm going to put a little plus sign in there just to to note what kind of words that I need. But generally, I think the note taking is going to be better for for kind of the more text heavy questions like the critical reasoning and especially the reading comprehension. Okay, that's the verbal side of things. Now let's shift over to quantitative. Okay, and in quantitative, you're going to have a few different question types. All right, so on the GRE versus GMAT Quant. Okay, so on the GRE, you're going to get problem solving and what they call quantitative comparisons. Quantitative comparisons are simply which value is bigger. All right, which value is bigger. Okay, now on the GMAT, you will of course also have your regular problem solving multiple choice, and you're going to have what was called data sufficiency. So unlike the quantitative comparisons, which is value A larger than value B, data sufficiency is, do you have enough information to answer the question? All right. So, you're given some basic information, and then it's going to say, okay, will value A give you enough? If not, will value B give you enough? If not, do you need both together? If not, it's either one sufficient or is neither one sufficient. All right. So how do you go about taking notes on the quant section? Now, here's where things can get a little bit out of control, especially where you're dealing with, kind of that limited yellow scratch pad. Actually, I wanted us to include a picture of the scratch paper on the GMAT. This I'm getting from the website Prep Scholar. Just so I have proper attribution. So let me copy this on 1 second. Okay. Okay, let's just go over to back over here to show you kind of what the whiteboard looks like. I'll put it down. Oops. Put it down the bottom here. Okay, so this is going to be the whiteboard for the GMAT. Looks a bit like this. You see how it's laminated. So you can see here, you don't have all that much room, and you're not allowed to erase. All right. Now, granted, it's like yes, you can get more if you need it, but the thing is, you don't want to keep running back and forth to get more scratch paper. If you do need more, you should wait until the end of the section, right? Because it'll take you a couple of minutes, to actually, and that's not time that you want to take out of the test, right? So what you want to do, you want to be sure that you are, writing your notes small, and that you're really kind of drawing out exactly what you need, right? You don't want to like take all sorts of notes on everything. You're basically going to want to extract key and pertinent data, right? So let's go back up to the top here. Font note taking should be small, simplified, and geared towards the following. All right. Now, key data, this is going to be, obviously numerical quantities, variables. If you have a word problem, right, you might want to like figure out a way to kind of translate, like words to math. Let's say mathematical representations of word problems. Let's say algebraic. This is the whole translating English to math bit. All right. Okay. Number. Okay. Number. Okay. Exactly. Okay, then it's a good idea. You might want to jot down kind of the concept that's being tested, or you might want to jot down clues. Or you might want to jot down you might actually be using it to do the math, right? If you need to simplify something, right? You need to simplify an equation or expression or a word problem. All right. So things like this. If you have something like a figure, right, like a geometric figure, you might want to actually kind of label that figure, right? Now, obviously, again, you can't label it, let's go take a look here. I mean, how might you use something like this? Let's grab this one here. Okay, for example, let's put in a GRE quantitative comparison problem here. All right. Okay, so you have something like this. All right, it's quantitative comparison. We're trying to figure out kind of which value is larger, the one on the left or the one on the right. Okay, now again, you are obviously not able to jot things down specifically on this thing, right? So you need to figure out a way to capture what you need to capture. So how would you like note take here? Well, what's really important? This is very important, right? K is parallel to M, so use shorthand, use notation, use like K parallel to M. Okay, okay, and then what do we know? Okay, we're trying to compare x plus y and w plus z, right? Okay, how do we figure out? Well, we know that the sum of the angles in a line, say angles in a line, add up to 180, right? We know that some of the angles in a triangle add up to 180, right? So if there's kind of a key basic concept, then you can just kind of jot that down. All right. Okay, so then what do we need? Okay, x plus something plus y equals 180, right? And z, because that's for the line, right? That plus that plus that. Okay, and then z plus w plus something. equals 180. All right, so that's how you know that x plus y and z plus w are going to be exactly the same, right? Now, you don't need to jot things down all the time. It's like, some stuff you can do in your head, right? If you know your multiplication tables, by all means. It's like if if you're fine doing 9 times 7, yeah, you don't have to write this stuff down. But you definitely want to minimize careless mistakes as best you can. All right. Okay, that's generally yeah, that's pretty much all that we needed to cover. Just kind of a simple class today, just kind of on how to take notes. I'm going to take a break for about let's see. Well, first of all, I'm gonna ask if you've got any questions there, and then I'll be back for another, say, 15 minutes to answer some questions. All set? Okay, and we're gonna, so anyone who signed up for this class is going to have
I
access.
have no question. No question.
Yes, sure.
So we can take a break.
Pardon me? Yeah. So the way the course is, the way these classes are designed, usually I'll do about a half an hour of content, and then I'll stick around for for questions if you have any.
Okay, just now for a question.
Say this again. No, but do you have a question? I'm here for a while, so anything that you'd like to ask or clarify about the test, I'm happy to help.
You can hear me now?
Pretty well. Connection's
Okay.
not perfect, but I can hear you okay.
Now just my question about the paragraph or the essay. On the online exam, the essay become 2 pages, and then the question become after. So when I read the question, I have to return back to essay, then I have to return back to read each choices from on the exam, on the question. So this is my problem. I try to make the exam, and this is what really it's a big problem, as I have to go back to essay, then I go back to the question. This is
Now,
take a lot of time from me.
Okay, so my question for you, are you talking about the essays where you're doing the writing or the reading comprehension, where they're giving you a passage?
Verbal reasoning.
The writing part, the analytical writing?
Verbal reasoning.
Oh, the critical reasoning. Verbal reasoning. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do like the best you can in order to kind of capture the yeah, I mean, it's tricky when you need to yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with this thing, because it's not a paper-based test where you don't actually have full access to it, yes, it can definitely be difficult. What you want to do is that's kind of where the main idea aspect comes in. Do the best you can to kind of capture the main idea, like in your own notes, to give you at least something to to kind of map things out, because it is going to take time to go back to the to the passage.
Yes.
But yeah, so I would say, like, whether you're doing critical reasoning, whether you're doing reading analysis, or any of these things, like, you want to do the best you can to at least try to have a little bit of a map on the page to kind of guide you as to kind of where things are.
Okay.
Because that way you're not actually scrolling through a whole bunch of text to to try to locate things.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes. This is really, it's a very difficult, especially when the question was regarding the idea or the author concept or something like this, not a specific question from a specific line or specific paragraph.
So something like a main idea?
What?
Yeah, so something like the main idea, or kind of like the like the author's intent or something like that. One thing that you might do, which can be helpful for those kinds of passages, is know where to look for these kinds of things. So very often you'll have more information in the introduction or the conclusion. You might have information in the first and last sentences of each individual paragraph. Those might give you a little bit of an extra clue of where to look. So like for let's take a look. For example, the example that I gave you with the long passage.
Yes.
Okay, take a look. Hold on a second. take a look here, for example. Okay. Okay. So see on line 4, they're asking a question, right? It's a rhetorical question. Why has it taken so long for historians to whatever? Okay. Then on line 10, we'll see. Okay, so on line 7, it says, okay, Maitland offered one reason. Okay. In line 10, you see the word yet, which is like but, right? It kind of changes direction. So we can kind of figure out what the layout is here, right? So it's like we're raising a question, we're postulating one potential reason, and then we're going to look at a counter argument. Okay. And then in line 14, going to do that again. Another possible explanation. See that? So what you might do if you're note taking, so, where I said here, like in the notes that I wrote here, it's like, well, okay, we've asked a question. Why focus on criminal and not civil law? And again, I know you haven't had time to read the entire passage, but, so basically the way it's set up is we've got like, one idea, then counter argument, right? Okay. Then we have in line, okay, then in line 14, so you see
Another
line,
idea.
you see what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Another idea. So you have second idea, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got the counter argument in line 19, where it says, but recent research suggests, right? So it's going to counter it, right? So that will at least kind of allow you to get, with really brief notes, a general passage map of kind of what's where. And that can because the thing is, again, when you're reading a long passage like this, you're not reading for details. You don't need to. You're reading for kind of a general sense of content. And when I mean, if a question asks you for the detail, then you can go back to it and you'll have a general idea of kind of where in the passage it might be. But that's generally how I would handle, you don't want to write very much, because you don't want to spend, like 15% of your time doing note taking. You just want to like have a quick set of signposts to tell you where you are.
No, okay.
All right. And I would definitely,
this is helpful, very helpful.
yeah. And I would practice it too. It's like, different note-taking strategies work for different people. And some people, would prefer to write less. Some people write a little bit more. It's just, whatever works for you. You just want to kind of have a good sense of, where things are and kind of, where to find stuff. And that's true for both the verbal and the math. Are you taking the GRE or the GMAT?
GRE.
Taking the GRE. Yeah, and you'll find something like the reading comprehension in the GRE can be it can be hard. It can be quite nuanced, right? I mean, there can be like a lot of shades of meaning in there. So you want to kind of like jot down quick things that kind of help you to read a little bit more actively. Help you so that you're not just kind of getting bored and zoning out with a passage that you may not be familiar with.
Yeah, really, it's very hard. It's the meaning and the words in the essay. It's very hard, really.
Yeah, it's a weird. It's not an easy test, and it's also a weird test. It's like it's very, very, very. I mean, it's very specific to a type of standardized testing that we've been doing here for I don't know 50 or 60 years, and it's like but it's very it's odd. It's not really I mean, it's not just testing you on the material, but there's also kind of a kind of creative thinking, but you sort of need to know what they're looking for. So that's why I said at the very beginning that this is a concept-based test. It's like, yeah, like once you know what the concepts are, it can definitely help you to to figure out kind of what they're asking. But if you don't know what they're asking, then things are pretty tough. So that's where practice comes in, because the more you see of these things, the more you recognize kind of how the test writers are thinking, what they want you to find, what they consider to be a good or a not so good answer, stuff like that. So the more you see, the more familiar you become, with these types of questions, the more they'll start to repeat.
Yes.
All right.
So it's a practice, yeah, really. From the first day I start to read. Now I'm very, I'm improved very well.
Good.
Yes,
Excellent.
it's a practice-wise. That's right.
That's good. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like the more you see, the more the more you go into become increasingly comfortable with it. So yeah, just keep going. It sounds like you're on a pretty good trajectory.
I'm just worried about the verbal reasoning for the writing and argument for the math. I'm not worried. I'm worried about the verbal reasoning.
How's how about the vocabulary type of questions? How are those going?
Yeah, it's good. يعني I'm start يعني for me the English all my study before it was on English. I'm from Jordan, and I'm
Oh,
Arabic country, so that's why some English word for me it's difficult.
sure.
But as my study was on English on the baccalaureate and the master degree, it's
Yeah.
become easier for me. And with practice, really, I'm start to practice the essay from the GRE and
Yep.
from different website. I
Yep.
become and I understand what I have to look and what the verb I have to know, vocabulary I have to know. So I start to be more.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I would say, yeah, definitely make vocabulary, it sounds like you are already, but it's like you make vocabulary a part of, like, like do whether it's 10 minutes or half an hour a day, just reviewing words, whether you use flashcards or a list or a phone app or whatever. Just kind of keep that going, because that's, that's about 60% or 50% of the verbal section. And then with the reading, it's like, the more you see of these kinds of passages, the more you're going to recognize, the kinds of questions that they're asking you.
Mm,
But yeah,
yeah.
sounds like you're well on your way.
Inshallah.
I hear you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Really, it
Sure
was
thing.
interesting and very helpful. Just
Okay.
I buy my whiteboard today, so
That's
I am just looking how I can arrange my time and my whiteboard when I take the exam. So I
yeah.
take
So
this,
you're practicing. Yeah, you're practicing the note taking already. Excellent. Very good.
yes. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Good luck. Take care.
Thank you. See
Bye
you.
bye. All right, folks, that will wrap up the class for today. Everyone, thanks for dropping by, and the recording will be sent to you this week. Have a good day. Oops. Stop.